Let's face it, there's something that you can change right now that would immediately change the quality of your life and your experience of being. This could be a conversation you need to have, a habit that you need to implement or kick, a behavior that's ruining your life, or one that could enliven it. It could be as simple as an idea that you've had the itch to explore and you know could actually change everything for you. I implore you, do not let that thing linger. It is slowly killing your psychological stability and your vigor for life. The magic you are looking for is in the silence or the work you're avoiding. Almost 5 years ago, I felt the first crack in my childhood belief system. An ended relationship made me question really what I knew about God, what I understood about morality, what I understood about who I was. But the discomfort was at that point not strong enough for me to actually question my belief system and ever really doubt. Over the next couple of years, small conversations here and there, a couple flings chipped away at this part of me, which I would promptly cover back up with some clever apologetic about why the newest problem I had just found wasn't actually a real problem. It was only until I stepped back a few years after the first incident, found that this beautiful work of art that was my faith was more repairs than actual art. There were a few scraps here and there glued together by crappy apologetics and frankly was on the brink of collapse. I couldn't take it anymore. At this point, what choices did I actually have? Continue and try to repair this broken artwork that was more glue than art at this point? Or would it be to just throw it out entirely, start fresh, and build something new from the ground up? A few years later now, I've continuously come back to a very uncomfortable and immensely powerful belief that has served me quite effectively. You must be willing to change everything about your life. Essentially, this is the belief that in service to growth, love, freedom, and truth, you cannot be attached to any part of your own identity or anything that would shape it. In the Western world, we largely believe, consciously or unconsciously, that we are the equivalent to our memories, the things we like and dislike, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, our behaviors, our beliefs, and so on. But really, if you take a minute to reflect on who you actually are, we often find that the things that we believe, the things that we feel, are actually learned behaviors. They're learned beliefs. They've been taught, adopted from a friend, a parent, absorbed from social media. We have essentially been trained to be the way that we are. Obviously, there's a genetic component to things, but for the most part, actually, for the entirety, behavior is always an interaction between our genetics and our environment. This isn't a bug, it's a feature of humanity. It's a survival mechanism. It's how evolution actually works. It's deeply wired into our genetics, into the structure of our nervous system. Our brains are actually built for pattern recognition. It's built for survival, not for truth. It's built for the cohesion of a society. That's who we are as a social species. All this to say, you should be able to change your life immediately upon careful analysis that something no longer serves you to continue doing, or that you know you need to change something. You should be willing to drop that immediately. Now, don't get me wrong, change is incredibly difficult. That's why you see people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are just as grumpy and broken and depressed and lonely as they were in their 20s. The root of their problems were never solved. They weren't willing and able, or even had the resources to really understand what change meant, to be able to implement the right structure to change effectively. The reason change is so difficult, we can explain in both psychological and neuroscientific terms. Psychology tells us in this principle of human behavioral consistency that people will generally act to maintain a coherent narrative about who they are and will align their thoughts and behaviors, consciously and subconsciously, with their perceived identity. This is why when you challenge a friend or a loved one on a behavior you know that they know is wrong, they will choose to defend that behavior and belief, even though it's not really beneficial to them in the long run in any sense, just in order to justify their character or quote unquote protect their ego. To get to that like deeper psychological or spiritual, if you will, level, real change is difficult because any new piece of information, any new behavior, any new challenge is really a threat to that ego, that capital E ego that we believe is at the center of our being. This idea of who we are and the way that things have to be. This is a core to human psychology. Change can signal to our egos that something about us was wrong. The old version of us was in some sense flawed or not capable enough or simply bad. And this new version that presented to us or posed upon us when we are called to change is a threat to our perceived value as a human being. And that change ultimately means death for that version of who we are. This is deep psychology. It's the way that we're wired. The ego doesn't like change because it feels unstable or unsafe. Neuroscience supports this. There's a lot of models, predictive processing models. I'd love to get into the depths of it, but they tell us that the brain is really a prediction machine whose ultimate goal is to keep us alive, first and foremost, and second, minimize the energy required to do so. Rather than scanning the world and interacting with the environment with every bit of sensory information that comes in, our brains take all the information and filter, look for specific elements of existence, of behavior, of the people around us, and compare them to what we call priors. Priors are really any set of beliefs, any idea, any experience that you've integrated beforehand that our brain uses the external reality to test against. And so rather than being an accurate representation of reality, your conscious experience is actually just a comparison between your priors and a prediction of what your brain thinks is actually out there. Habit implementation can often be energetically costly. It changes how we view ourselves, how our brains actually predict who we are as agents in the world. And so if a change is more costly energetically than not changing, if the friction to implementing a change is higher than the friction that this change would potentially reduce in your life, your brain will not allow you to implement this new habit or pattern. So we and our brains have created specific narratives about who we are and systems to optimize for consistency and energy minimization. There's no room or no focus on truth or real growth. So knowing this about our psychology and how our brains work on a neuroscience level, and also knowing the idea that you as a person are mostly learned, a product of your environment, of your social situation, rather than like objectively real. Does human consistency actually stand up to the rigor of critical thought? Does your attachment to the way that things have been actually mean anything other than just the simple purpose it serves in your life? I believe that the answer is no. I believe that from a very utilitarian perspective, if the way you've been doing things is more harmful than good, you have no obligation to staying consistent with that version of you. If something is truly not in service to you, your mission, your love for the world, your growth, the long-term good of the people around you, you should be able to change it immediately. You will feel resistance to doing the thing that you know must be done. It is inevitable. It is a product of your ego, your psychology, your brain trying to keep you safe, trying to minimize the energy required to change in the short term because it can't actually understand what's going to happen in the long term. It can't predict that far ahead. But safety and comfort isn't necessarily our goal. If you are reading this, I imagine you to be someone who cares about the bigger picture, cares about truth, growth, love, radical impact, and actually doing something worthwhile in your life. And for that, safety is actually a barrier to achieving the things that you want to achieve. So rather than fearing this resistance or this draw to come back into old, useless, or harmful habits, use that discomfort, that fear, as an indicator that you are moving in the right direction, that you're actually doing something worthwhile. Anything of importance will be difficult, almost definitionally. It almost means that most people won't do it, rendering our important choices, the behaviors that actually produce good and change in the world, these ones that have some friction to it, are scarce and therefore inherently valuable. Most success comes from sustained discomfort over long periods of time, which unfortunately most people aren't capable of handling. So, what do you need to do? This could be as simple as a one-time action, a conversation you need to have, a decision you've been avoiding, a message you just need to hit send on. This could also be a sustained decision. It could be commitment to that new diet so you can finally lose that weight you've been talking about, a commitment to that goal to post your content and actually grow your social media brand to the level that you've been wanting to for years. Self-call out there. Maybe it's a lasting change in your environment, in the people you spend time around, because God knows that has an impact on us as well. The longer you wait, the more both your conscious mind and your subconscious mind will start to feel the friction, and then eventually the discomfort, and eventually the pain. And two things will happen from here. One is you will learn to live with the pain and be in chronic discomfort your entire life, knowing that you could have changed something and choosing not to do it over and over and over again. Or the second is that the pain will be so great that something will snap. People develop heart disease and get sent to the hospital because they eat poorly. People will get lung cancer because they keep smoking. People will be in relationships for decades until finally their partner snaps at them and asks for divorce. And they're not prepared to handle the consequences of their 40 years of action. The longer you put this off, the more friction and discomfort you will feel, and generally, the more consequences you'll feel for putting off that action. If you keep putting off going to talk to that girl, your inner narrative will start to tear you down and continue to confirm that you are incapable of being confident. If you keep falling short on that diet, you'll never get to where you know you can be with your physique, which might lead to health issues down the line. If you never express your desires in the workplace, at your job, about what you actually want to do, how much you know you should be making, whatever it might be, if you never launch that business, you will always be in that stage of what if. I promise that over time, what if hurts so much more than any one decision you have to make in the moment. Very likely, you know what to do. You'll feel it. And if you don't, I'd encourage you to just take a seat and meditate on this idea. Feel your body, and rather than forcing the thoughts, just allow this discomfort or tension to rise in your body. Then you can pin it down. If that doesn't work, we have more tools at our disposal. Do a blind spot check with a friend. Ruthlessly assess your life for levers that could be pulled to free you from unconscious or conscious tethers, behaviors that you had no idea were holding on to you. Have a friend who cares about you come and tell you what they actually think about your life. Put your ego aside for a moment. You don't need to hold on to every single word that they say, but take it as a point of data from someone from the outside. This honestly could be as simple as was in my case, of not going on my phone first thing in the morning. This was a part of my morning routine. I didn't realize I was the type of person who did that. It didn't serve me, realized it was killing my motivation, it was destroying my focus. I was not attached to the outcomes of this situation, so I dropped it. I used nicotine every single day for almost an entire year, and on and off, frankly, for the better part of like 4 years. I realized in those last couple months that it was making me anxious during the day, it was ruining my performance at work, destroying my sleep. As soon as I recognized those things, as soon as I was made aware of that blind spot, I quit in a single day. Now it's been almost 4 months since I've touched nicotine. I was not attached to that behavior, and so I dropped it. And that fateful day, a couple years ago, I had realized that my belief system had been causing me a ton of internal resistance and cognitive dissonance. I could no longer sit in that identity because it was causing me too much pain. I assessed it critically and followed truth where I thought truth led, and I ended up in a new space that was completely different to what I had grown up with. I found that new space served me and served my mission and the world around me more effectively. As soon as I decided that I was no longer attached to my faith, I left it. You must be willing to change everything about your life. You know what you need to do. Give it a good critical thought and some internal feeling. Do a blind spot check and figure it out. You may have a great system now. Don't get me wrong, consistency of character is of great importance. There's a reason we evolve this sense. It sets the foundation for long-term vision, growth, relationships, identity. But don't cower from cognitive dissonance. Lean in and resolve it. Okay, a little postscript for you guys. One of the greatest blind spot checks I've ever done was created by one of my favorite authors, Dan Koe, who honestly has created one of my favorite psychological models of human conscious development. There's a couple that I like, AQAL, integral theory. I've wrote some stuff on that in the past. And this one I feel captures a lot of what AQAL is, but gives it a very tactical and practical way, like in a very Dan Koe manner. And so he created this entire philosophical system based on models of human psychological evolution. And from it, he created a free AI prompt that assesses along where in his model you would lie in conscious development. So there's four main quadrants, essentially: vocation, so what you're doing for work; body, which is health, fitness, nutrition, sleep, all that; mind, which is your, I would say, identity, mental space; and then spirit relates generally to larger belief systems, structures, spirituality, religion, whatever that might be. But these are the four quadrants he comes across. And so I worked through this prompt. It took me about 30 minutes. If you want to go in depth into the whole like theory behind it, you can read his post as well, or watch a little video that breaks it down. Took me about 30 minutes, and I was humbled. It was spot on. It was able to really point out some of the flaws I have and currently am working through in the ways that I think, some of the challenges that I have. But like any blind spot check from a friend, you take it with a grain of salt. But this truly hit the nail on the head of what I need to do. And so if you have 30 minutes, please explore this. I'll link it in the description below. Use the prompt here. The clarity I felt moving into this year because of the prompt caused me, one, a tremendous amount of psychological discomfort, as I had to shed a handful of layers of old versions of me that were frankly afraid to die. And I felt a lot of clarity moving from that and kind of putting those to the sword and putting them to the test of critical thought. And so, yeah, the clarity I feel is quite unparalleled. I implore you, if you haven't already, from the rest of this video, get clear on what's holding you back, then take action, resolve it. Self-actualization is truly the ultimate game. Thanks for watching.